Ladies and gentlemen, happy President's Day. Shelley Wynter in for Mark Arum. Mark Arum, like a lot of the big wigs around here, they're out for President's Day. But Deborah Green is here, Longoria is here, Vinny, my cousin Vinny is here, and I am here. 4 minorities here working on President's Day. As usual, we're being used as worker bees. But it's okay. We're just happy to have jobs. I'm Shelley Wynter. I normally air Monday through Friday, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. So please check me out if you've never heard me before. Or you can follow me on social media at WSB Radio or at Shelley Wynter, SHELLEYWYNTER. And you can watch the live feed and see what I look like at WSBRadio.com. Coming up later on the show, I have 4 tickets to give away to the Auto Trader 400 NASCAR Cup Series. It's going to be this Sunday, February 22nd at Echo Park Speedway. Hey, Deborah, I got a question. Echo Park Speedway, is that Atlanta Speedway?
Yeah, remember like a year and a half ago, they got a new sponsor for it, so it's Echo Park Speedway.
Okay, gotcha. So I just wanted to check that. So I definitely want to start here, ladies and gentlemen. Early voting started today for the March 10th special election for the 14th Congressional District. Over 17 candidates are going to be on the ballot. Some people will have names on the ballot, but they've already dropped out, which is crazy. Let me say this. If you've dropped out of the 14th Congressional District election that you just paid $5,000 to qualify for, I'm not sure of the thinking around that. And to drop out, one gentleman dropped out because he made a promise to the White House that if he didn't get the endorsement, he was going to drop out. And I'm thinking to myself, who'd you talk to at the White House that would even accept that promise? Why didn't they tell you at the outset, no, we're not going to endorse you, don't bother signing up? Like, it's just, this whole race has been crazy to me, okay? But I do want to talk about a poll that came out this weekend. So the 2 most recent polls in the 14th Congressional District. Actually, I'm sorry. I apologize. I want to talk about the early voting starts today in the 14th. Donald Trump endorsed Clay Fuller. Clay Fuller is a DA out of Lookout Mountain in that area. The guy had 2 years left on his term, but he's dropping out, moving forward, climbing his ambitious ladder to become a congressperson, thus leaving the voters who just elected him 2 years ago in the lurch because now they have to elect a new DA. He got the Trump endorsement, not because Donald Trump necessarily knows him personally. He got the endorsement because his campaign consultant is the same as Mike Collins' campaign consultant, and they all know Donald Trump, and they pushed for Clay Fuller to get the endorsement. So those of you voting for Clay Fuller because he has the Trump endorsement, understand that this is pure politics. Who do you know? It's not anything else more than that. Also, Colton Moore, who is probably the closest person there to Donald Trump because he is a state senator and he actually casts votes, unlike many of the others who are claiming to be Trump supporters. He actually casts votes that can be verified as America First type policies. He didn't get the endorsement because, as he told us, and I played on my show, and I can tell you right now, he didn't get Trump's endorsement in the 14th because Donald Trump told him directly that he was a friend of Thomas Massie. And he didn't like that, and he didn't want to take that chance. So he went ahead and endorsed a guy he barely knew, and that guy's running on the Trump endorsement. So those of you who are following the Trump endorsement and saying to yourselves, which, let me say it at the outset before I say anything else, it's crazy to me. It's crazy to me that I'm seeing people saying, well, I'm voting for Fuller because he's got the Trump endorsement. Like, you don't think for yourself? What about the policies? Oh, I love the policies because he's going to do everything Trump wants. Okay, so then he doesn't represent the 14th. He's going to be representing Donald Trump. That's kind of what you want. That's interesting to me for a country that prides itself on freedom. But I digress. But this race, early voting starts today. I want you all to go out and vote. I like Tom Gray. He's a pastor. He's real. He's a good man, and he spent 30 years building a church, which is a business, and he's a true outsider. I like outsiders. I don't know, this all of a sudden, people love Donald Trump for being an outsider and a successful businessman, are now all of a sudden saying, I'm going to do what Donald Trump tells me to do. So you don't like outsiders. You don't like businessmen. You just like what he tells you to do. It's a fascinating race to pay attention to. It really is. How people are just spinning their brains and doing mental gymnastics to make things fit in a world that they never loved or never liked before Donald Trump came along. But early voting starts today. I suggest you vote for Tom Gray. But you can vote for whomever you want. But just make it about policy, not about who Donald Trump endorsed. Please do that for me. Now, I do want to shift over to the governor's race. This is very interesting. A poll came out, an interactive poll. It's put out by a company, CO Efficient. What is it called here? Let me get it right here. It's called CO/Efficient. This is a interactive poll that they did, right? Now, I want to tell you, this poll was conducted February 8th and 9th, between February 8th and 9th. And there's another poll that was conducted between February 5th and 8th, right? So let me talk about the first poll. The first poll just dropped. This poll is on a New York Times page. You could find it there. And it says, this pollster does not meet our criteria for select pollsters. But yet they had the poll up, right? Which is fine. 1,123 likely voters. The poll that just dropped had Rick Jackson of Jackson Healthcare in the lead with 24% of the vote. Burt Jones at 16% of the vote, and Brad Raffensperger at 9% of the vote, and Chris Carr at 3%. Interestingly enough, this poll had 42% undecided, okay? Now, people who like Carr or Raffensperger or one of the other candidates, or even Burt Jones, are yelling and screaming about it's not a legitimate poll. That's fair. That's fair, right, if you want to do that. Here's where it becomes interesting. Signal Political, which is a pollster that meets the criteria for select pollsters, according to the New York Times, the pollsters that they pay attention to, Signal had a poll that was conducted February 5th to the 6th. 600 likely voters. So this is a quote-unquote legitimate poll, if you want to call it such. This poll had 22%, Burt Jones leading with 22%. It had Rick Jackson in second place with 16%. It had Chris Carr, its third place with 7%, and 45% did not know, meaning undecided. Here's what's so fascinating. Even if you toss out the first poll, the second poll still has Chris Carr at the bottom. It has Jones at 22%, Rick Jackson at 16%, Raffensperger at 10%, Chris Carr at 7%, and 45% undecided. So if you toss out the first poll, which has similar numbers, except they have Rick Jackson and Jones reversed, but it's all the same. Nearly over 40% of voters in a Republican base primary vote are undecided. Now, many people, including Phil Kent and others, are saying it's too early to poll. Let me explain something to everybody. It can't be too early to poll because Burt Jones, Brad Raffensperger, and Chris Carr are all well-known names within the Republican likely primary voter. Those three gentlemen are all known very well by likely Republican primary voters. So you can't say it's too early to poll because you have three two-term elected officials, one AG, one lieutenant governor, and one secretary of state. Burt Jones has been in the news. He's done a lot for the state. Raffensperger, has been in the news since 2020. Chris Carr has been in the news because he's done well as an attorney general. So Republican likely primary voters absolutely positively know who these three gentlemen are. The fact that it's 42% undecided means that people still, with the knowledge that they know of all three candidates, still have not made a decision. And it's not because it's too far out. It's because they're not sure. Enter Rick Jackson, $50 million, billionaire businessman, Jackson Healthcare, a staple in the state of Georgia in the healthcare industry, a very large industry, by the way. Hospitals, urgent cares, doctors' offices, nursing, everything to do with healthcare, business back office, everything. See, the political class doesn't know who Rick Jackson is, but the people know exactly who he is. Many of them have gone through his company to get jobs. The hospitals know who he is. The government officials know who he is. More importantly than that, every single charitable organization knows who he is because they donate a lot of money to charity. It's not just foster care, not just foster kids. It's all kinds of charities. So the giving community knows who he is. The healthcare community knows who he is. This guy's not an unknown. He may be an unknown as a political figure to political people, but he's not unknown in the state of Georgia, which is why his numbers are so high. People are saying he's paying for these polls. No, he's not. And I'm for Burt Jones, let's be clear, but he's not paying for these polls. You may not know him as a political figure, but trust me, the business community, the philanthropic community, the healthcare community, that's a whole lot of people. They know exactly who this guy is, and that's why he's polling so high. And I will say to those people, don't be surprised. I like Chris Carr. He's a good man. I don't support him for governor, but I like him. I think he's a good man. I like Brad Raffensperger. I don't think Brad Raffensperger is a terrible human being that should go to jail. No, I think he did his job as Secretary of State. You may disagree with him. I like him as a good guy. Just don't support him for governor. I like Burt Jones. But those of you who are looking at this polling, you need to have a really come to Jesus meeting with yourselves and with your campaigns that you support, because in both of these polls, whether you believe them or not, but they're a moment in time, Chris Carr is the one being most negatively impacted by Rick Jackson jumping into this race. And even before Rick Jackson jumped in this race, Chris Carr had never moved above third. He was always polling below Jones and below Raffensperger. Rick Jackson jumping in a race just pushes him further down. And at some point, Chris Carr and his team have to come to a conclusion of, do we stay in this race? Because at some point, it's got to be made clear that you are losing ground, particularly with the entrance of Rick Jackson. Shelley Wynter in for Mark Arum, ladies and gentlemen. Mark is off, surprise, surprise, for President's Day. Is it President's Day or Valentine's Day is he off for?
Well, today's President's Day.
Well, I know, but, you know, did he take advantage of Valentine's Day falling on a Saturday? Because a lot of my friends did. They went away and took advantage of it being on a weekend.
Today's a federal holiday.
All right. Mark Arum's off for President's Day. I tried to save you, Mark. We'll be right back.